All right. I'm not sure where I'm going to start this in on. I might be, like I said, cut out some of the technical stuff that we just did, but I want to thank my friend Cheryl for being there at the beginning so we can get this. I've got a brand new microphone that I'm using, so I'm not going off of the uh, microphone that was on or is on the camera because that's what was happening last week. The first video I made when the introduction was just off the microphone on the laptop. So I'm progressing microphones upgrading, So hopefully this setup will be fine. I think, you know, as we go, like I said, we're gonna have some guests appearance and I'll just kind of move over or whatever. I might interview Johnny sometime when I get a chance. We'll see what he says. Um, but if anybody was wondering what that picture of Johnny Cash, that's actually a painting, a really nice one. My buddy Dean, um, who rest in peace, passed away uh, in I think 2020, as I believe. And but anyway, he left me a lot of that art. Brought it to the Americana, and uh, I put it up, and that one was one of the prime spots over there. So if you've been to the Americana was a live music venue that I managed, owned and managed in Houston, and that's my buddy Dean Hughes provided that for us. I've got some other. I might put some other. The other thing that's on the wall there's the Song of the Year award that I had. I've had that up in the living room for a while. So it's an older one. It's 2008, so it's passe. So maybe we'll put something else up there. It was everybody's got an award. I always say it's awards are like opinions. Everybody's got one uh, somewhere along the line. That's okay. I've got some trophies from Little League and that too. So all right, starting into our discussion today, I used the title "Free Speech is Dangerous." Danger, danger, danger. Will Robinson. But anyway, so the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the term, and I always make some notes here, and still getting organized. Um, that free speech is not you don't when we say define free speech, it's nothing that you have a definition for free speech. It's a concept, and it's based on some kind of moral or ethical judgment that we have as individuals and as a society, and we have our opinions. It's made up of opinions to what really free speech is. So that's why it's when we went to when the framers of the Constitution went there and put together the First Amendment, they had the concept of free speech, uh, and then it was always going to be up to they knew I think they knew it was always going to be up for discussion as to what the parameters of that was going to be, and that's why they built the court system. But specifically, now the First Amendment to the Constitution does not provide for free speech. It doesn't come up and say everybody will have free speech in America. What it does say, though, is that the government itself, specifically the Congress, won't make any laws interfering with free speech. Now, there's a lot going on in the press. Like, I don't want to bring whole lot of politics into these podcasts, but this is the concept of free speech is a concept that affects the arts and affects culture in general, which is our focus. Is about talking about how to uh, uh, move our culture along, and the arts communities, and that. But what do we do in the arts communities? What's our purpose? What's our impetus? What do we do as artists? It doesn't matter if whether you're a songwriter, a painter, a sculptor, a playwright, whatever actor. Okay, creativity brings out um, opinions. Um, you can't help it. I mean, it's just you're going to create things, and you're going to have. This is the way I believe that mountain looks as I paint this mountain. So I'm going to have different kind of approaches to it and that. Now, obviously, that might be not as controversial if somebody paints Mount Rainier as a one way, and then there's a little different school of art that this determines that somebody else going to paint it this way. A primitive artist come in and do it this way. All right, so you're making these choices, and but when you start talking about human behavior, interaction, and that, you're going to have those concepts. So you're going to have to say, okay, is what I'm expressing going to be a problem with other people? Am I going to? And as a folk singer, uh, if I can remember the exact quote, uh, but I'm trying to remember that, But anyways, I'll come up with that later probably because that'll affect our presentation as we go. Now, the first thing I wanted to do, which I thought would be a good way to kind of get a definition, like I said, there's not really a definition for it, but to understand and get opinions for the concept and how people accept it and explain it, is to go to some quotes. And I actually dug up some quotes here. It's easy to find. I just Googled freedom of speech quotes, or quotes of freedom of speech, and came up with it's under Goodreads. You could probably find that yourself. So, but what we're going to do is I'm going to first read a quote, and if anybody wants to uh, chat in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a quote here it's here, and if anybody wants to chime in, and Cheryl, you're the only one out there. You're the only one who gets to determine live if you know um, whose quote this is, where it came from. I'll read it, and then we can discuss a little bit about what's coming out of that quote. So anyway, let's. This is the first quote. Quote: If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. So I'll say it again. If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. Okay. Well, we'll start discussion. If you come up, if you think about who that might be, who might have said that, please let me know. If you're after the fact, you want to put it in the comments. But actually, I'll just tell you in a little bit. But obviously, there's if you think about it, if the freedom of speech is not a concept if everybody's on the same page. It's just we're general information. Uh, the Earth revolves around the sun is not a debatable issue to most. I would hope. So anyway, so something like that fact is well accepted. So if anybody speaks against that, it's kind of like, well, okay, you have your right to think otherwise. And they obviously, if you know anything about history, that was actually a sinister uh, comment to make, concept to try to promote, um, because everything revolved around the earth. We as humans, everything revolves around individuals and stuff. That's a whole nother conversation. But you can go into like hardcore factual material that is very verifiable, personally verifiable. The best facts are, number one, personally verifiable. You saw it with your own eyes. You heard it with your own ears. But even those can be, like you can get situations where you can get fooled. Your eyes can fool you, your ears can fool you. But generally, your best bet is to personally verify any kind of fact or anything, and then you go to then there's credible sources, and there's all different levels of factual and so. But as we get to certain gray areas where it is all about, hey, this is my opinion as to what should be happening or what was happening. If you do that, okay, Cheryl's chiming in here, but what we know now is not necessarily the truth. The future may prove us wrong, as it always has. Like I just gave the example of um, back. But tell me, Cheryl, do you know? Maybe you can help me on this one. Who was the astronomer that came out with first came out with the concept that the Earth revolves around the sun. It was one of those, I think maybe it was Copernicus. I get confused. Copernicus, Galileo. Um, I remember which one. This is not a science lesson here, but, but anyway, but in general, yeah, you're right. I mean, we might know one day everybody's accepting something as fact. The next day, it's not. Galileo. Cheryl says it's Galileo. If anybody else uh, after the fact here, please put it in the comments, and that's how we'll work on that stuff. So anyway, but back in those days, yeah, like religious people didn't want to hear that. No, 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 no. We're the center of the universe. You know, if you go by the hardcore beliefs of the Bible, and the world was created in 6 days, and on the seventh day God rested. You understand that everything was centered around the earth, and then the sun and the planets and all that was on day whatever it was, 3 or 4. First it was a light, first it was this and that, whatever. You went through and created everything around the earth, because on a base level, it's we're kind of stupid animals. I don't want to make it insult anybody, but we are just learning little by little, about the world around us and the universe and how we fit into the universe. And at that point, people were just kind of like trying to find their way into, the science wasn't there for people to travel far or to see into the skies. Everything was a mythology. Everything became, a religion or mythology, and most religions are a mythology. They have their you have your gods, or you have your god or whatever, and your saints and this and that, and there's like this way that everything evolved, and it was revolved around. But in the early days, people understood that they were the center of the universe at that point. So anyway, that's going off on a tangent on that, but basically, when he was saying, now the person that said this, and it's related to George Orwell. So that's a George Orwell quote. If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. So you can go and say, yeah, I really believe this. I thought that this was what was happening in the world, and in government, or whatever it is, wherever you're saying. I thought that was it. And some people will hang on to that thought, and it becomes religious to them, that concept. That sometimes just one thread, you pull one thread away from them, and it'll, hopefully, and that's what speech can do. I mean, it's you give people one grain of truth that could topple a whole system of beliefs. So that's why it's dangerous in a lot of ways. I'll go back to the theme, and we'll get into, as we talk about, when society builds this structure, whether it's in government or society in general, and everybody believes in this and that, and all of a sudden there's this thing that you prove wrong. That's a basis for the philosophy. It can bring down. So people want to hold on to their system. They want to believe in that system. So they don't want to hear it. So that's why a lot of people gets their language and their thoughts, their writings, the books and whatever gets suppressed, because they go against it's that thread that's going to be, because they believe it's going to be that thread that's going to pull apart their society. So in order to protect speech, you have to understand that if you really want to have a society that has that concept, that ethical concept of free speech, you are going to have to allow for speech that is unpopular, and speech that you don't agree with, speech that makes you a little bit angry, whatever it is. You're going to have to allow and say, okay, that's the person's opinion. There's got to be a reason that person has that opinion. They might be a kook. You might say. Then a couple of these, as we go down, you'll see some of these are a little bit lighter, and kind of address that, but in a poignant way. So let's move on to the next quote. And the next quote is, quote, I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And so that's addressing uh, someone's to explain someone's uh, who explain someone who is an advocate for free speech and why, because it's something that uh, if we don't have the freedom of speech, society can't evolve. It can't become um, more cohesive, can't become more knowledgeable. Okay, it stops that. So if you have an idea, well, I want you to get that idea out, because next time it might be my idea, and I won't be able to get that out. And most people that understand the concept of free speech understand that's what happens when you start suppressing one, you'll suppress the other. Then somebody's going to be some revenge. You get back. I'm gonna ban your book. You're gonna whatever it is. Uh, it gets to be a cycle, an evil cycle. But again, I'll read it again. I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend your death. I will defend, that's a Freudian slip, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. So that's protecting you looking at everything holistically and saying, yes, if we are going to have this society that's going to value free speech, I'm going to value everyone's speech. So that's what that goes to. And that the author on that was it's attributed to S.G. Pellentier, Tallenttyre, and then it says the Friends of Voltaire, which is interesting. The Friends of Voltaire. I'm not sure what that group is. Let me see if. Well, I'm not going to go to it now, but Voltaire being the French poet and playwright, um, humorist, and that might call him. From I forgot what we're talking about, 16th century. I don't know, Shakespeare time, around that time. Anyway, so that's that one. Next one. Here's one quote. I may not agree with you, but I will defend to the death your right to make an ass of yourself. So that's a little bit of a different take. It's actually the hint. It's actually by a very famous writer and someone that someone out there might have heard. So again, what says quote? I may not agree with you, but I will defend to the death your right to make an ass of yourself. So that's kind of a way to if to lighten up the objective. Like I said, you might think somebody's a kook, and that's fine. You can think somebody's a kook, but you know we could talk about. We always a lot of the podcasts and within the news. There's a guy Alex Jones. Okay, everybody thinks or thought he was a kook, and some of the stuff that he came out with was kind of like, oh man, yeah, you're right. Even from my perspective as a free speech, somewhat of a free speech absolutist, it was kind of like, man, I don't know, but yeah, as it gone, I mean, I guess it's kind of like broken clock could be right a couple times a day. Um, but if actually a bunch of his stuff is kind of like, hey, I can see how he came up with some of these opinions that he has. Some of them I still a little bit off base for me, but just to say, but I'll give him, he should not be censored. He should, if he wants to say certain things that are off the wall. And sometimes stuff sounds off the wall, as we're talking earlier. It just seems like, well, there's no way. And all of a sudden you find out, yeah, that's true. There becomes evidence for it. So, but yeah, I mean, if it's something weird, like the guy that says, oh, no, Earth is flat. Earth is flat. So flat earthers are taking a lot of shit lately. So poor guys, the flat earther people. But hey, you got your right. If you really want to believe that, but once the thing is the fear then becomes, and again, the power centers or the people that are protecting the status quo are saying, well, maybe they can start a movement of flat earthers where they're doing things that are preventing um, uh, travel or something because restrictions, things like that, with that in mind, or however it might come up. There might be certain laws that are and within teaching and schools or whatever, they might take over and stuff. So, and that's a paranoia thing, I think. So we have to have trust sometimes in human, um, what would you call it? Perception, human perception, common sense, that, most people, 99.9% of the people in the world have some sort of common sense, and whatever kind of statistic you want to throw in there for it. But anyway, so it's basically just you make an ass of yourself to say what I say. Sometimes things that I say, I'll put it on Facebook something, and I'll get comments back from people saying, you're not out of your mind. This is crazy. This is weird. So Cheryl commenting again. The concept of it, art can corrupt. Okay, let me read that again. So make sure my glasses are on right. The concept of it, art can corrupt and should be censored. In the portrait of Dorian Gray, he claims Husman's, is that supposed to be humans, probably, right? He claims humans against the grain is what corrupts him. In the portrait of Dorian Gray, he claims humans against the grain is what corrupts him. Well, I'm going to read your whole thing again here. The concept of it, art can corrupt and should be censored. I get it. Now, I'm not familiar with the Dorian Gray character. Obviously, you are, but you're saying that the Dorian Gray character. That's what was that from a book? Is that the name of the book, Dorian Gray? Cheryl? In the portrait of Dorian Gray, he claims humans against the grain is what corrupts him. Yeah, I mean that's basically what we're saying here is a power center. Each individual has their own power center. We normally talk about it in respect to politics but in human interaction, there are power. You've heard power couples and power this and that, and corporations. There's power structures, and any little business, any little in any relationship, it can do that. There's different kinds of power struggles. But yeah, what was the name? Dorian Gray. Yeah, fill me in a little bit on that, without getting too far into it. But anyway, so but yeah, that's kind of where we're looking at. Next one, we're going into the next quote. Quote: censorship is to art as lynching is to justice. That's a pretty heavy one. Censorship is to art as lynching is to justice. And that's, actually what you just said there, Cheryl, kind of lines up pretty nicely with that one. So, you want to, you want to kill corruption. What you believe is corruption is an artist coming out and doing something that's against the power structure, whatever, presenting a piece of art that's against the power structure, represents something. And the ultimate freedom of speech in America is to burn the American flag. That's a definite corrupt action against. It's something that couldn't corrupt. But what that tells me is there is definitely an insecurity. If something like somebody, I might not like that speech. I might hate that kind of speech in general. But it is political speech. And if I think that, our government or our, is bad, I have my own way of verbalizing that or representing that in my art. So I have different means, but whether I can respect that person for doing that, that's not part of it. I could disrespect a person for doing something that I think is hurtful or insensitive, whatever. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to try to censor that person, or because they still have that right to express it. Because something I might say might be taken wrong, or taken in out of context, or whatever. So anyway, so hey, we got somebody else in on the here. So it's showing I got two people out there. I know Cheryl, you're still probably out there. So whoever else is out there, chime in. I know Cheryl lives on the southeast side of Houston. Um, it's always good to maybe kind of chime in and say, hey, I'm here in Woodlands, Texas, or I'm here in Chicago, Illinois, or I'm here in wherever, Timbuktu, wherever you might be. Uh, Feel free to chime in, and just on the chat. We went over the chat earlier. You just got to put in chat, and then there's a little arrow you punch to get the chat sent. So if you want to, if you don't want to, if you just want to be incognito, that's part of you. Then since we're talking about freedom of speech here, that's your freedom. There's also freedom of speech is also the freedom to say nothing, and which gets to be a problem, because I think people say nothing because they're afraid that somebody's not going to like it, or it might hurt their chances to get either a job or whatever. Just some work against it. Somebody's going to work against them because they said something that they interfered with somebody else's thing. So but anyway, feel free. If you don't, that's fine too. Once again, you're at Folk You Zeus. That's the name of the podcast, discussing music, art, and culture, and all that, how that all kind of intertwines. So moving on here with the quotes. Well, yeah, let's say censorship is to art as lynching is to justice. Obviously, it's lynching is a term that was like a Jim Crow. If people don't know what Jim Crow was, that was a racist legislation and culture that happened post Civil War, mostly. There were some. It was mainly in the South. It happened in the North too. So, but so that's kind of like when you put out an opinion that's provides an illusion, provides it's something to look at. Oh wow, lynching. People understand that that's not a good term. That's something that everybody should be not in favor of, the lynching. So that's what makes when you make a good line. There's in writing, and the songwriter, you come up with a good line. You use these illusions, not illusion, but allusion, meaning you kind of refer to another. That makes somebody think of that. You could see when you mention lynching, you can almost see someone lynching, being hung, on a mob, and that whole that negative feeling, and that disgust and all that. So it's like, so anyway, here we go. So far, so good music, said Sup Mark. I'm sure I don't have the problem of saying nothing. Oh, okay, there you go. So far, so good music. Now, I'm not sure because you don't put your name in there. I don't. Sorry that I don't know your music company's name. But where are you at? So far, so good. You don't have to say your name, but where are you located? Are you in Houston, or you in Chicago, or where? Let me know. And Cheryl said, I'm having trouble getting this chat feature to enter. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. Hopefully it'll work better. I'm not sure if it's a intermittent connection or something, but I'm solid, I think, on my end. I haven't had any glitches here. So as we're going, here we go. Okay, let's play the guessing game. Well, I'll tell you what, man. I'll play guessing game with you later, but I'm going to keep on to the content here. Oh, I got off that page to the wrong page. Okay, so let's move on to the next quote. Okay, quote. Okay, that last one. All right, we didn't get the author of that quote. Censorship is to art, and lynching is to justice. That was Henry Louis Gates. Okay, the one before it, did we even get to that one? I may not agree with you, but I will defend to your death your right to make an ass of yourself. That was Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde, famous author. Henry Louis Gates Jr., who I'm not familiar with. I'm not a genius, but Henry Louis Gates Jr. said censorship is to art as lynching is to justice. Okay, next quote here. This is a good one. It relates more to government. To announce that there must be no criticism of the president or that we are to stand by the president, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but is morally treasonable to the American public. That's a bunch of words. A very wordy person said that. So, yeah, think about who might have said that. Okay, yeah, Cheryl had another comment here. In the book of Damnation, if Theron Ware, the book of Damnation, by Theron Ware, okay, it is the music played by the woman that is deemed to be too corrupt. So it's kind of like the Sirens or something from that thing where you get influenced by, it's like the devil music, the devil inside, that kind of a thing. So yeah, I get that one for sure. Yeah, going back to this one, I'll say it again because it's a long one and has a bunch of stuff in it. To announce that there must be no criticism of the president or that we are to stand by the president, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but is morally treasonable to the American public. Okay, now that came from somebody that lots of quotes have come from this person. I'll tell you up front, that's Teddy Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, president of the United States, around the turn of the century, 1900, that era. Can't remember which number he was, but anyway, so he was interesting. I mean, I'm a big fan of his domestic policy, just on a personal level. I'm always, the things that he did domestically to address income equality, even, and the Industrial Revolution, and he was the president that had to deal with a lot of the breaking up of the trusts, antitrust laws, and that. And he was the first president to broker a union action. So he's the first president to get involved. Most up until that point, it was all a free for all for the federal government, the president. Nobody ever got involved with labor issues. So what would normally local governments would send in the goons and beat up the strikers and that. And it was, but when he came in, he says it was, I forgot which union strike it was. Was it the coal miners? I think it might have been at the time. But anyway, you can look into that. But I'm not a big fan of his foreign policy. He was one of the first people to really start getting out and practicing imperialism beyond our borders. So, but anyway, controversial in that respect, but definitely a strong president. But so basically, what he's saying is that it's unpatriotic and servile to not support or to be against someone not supporting the president. So let me read it again. To announce that there must be no criticism of the president and that we are to stand by the president, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but is morally treasonable to the American public. And he brings up treason. Obviously, that's a very strong, that's coming from a president. And I'm not sure exactly when he said this, if he was president at the time or that. It's something we can research at a later date, but that's not really what we're going into here. The concept is that, criticizing government that's why we have a First Amendment. That's one of the reasons, one of the main reasons. And if you look into other writing by the forefathers, as we call them, um, and the discussions of that while they were, in the Constitutional Congress, um, putting it together. That's a lot of the discussion was around that again too. So criticizing government, you need to protect. Obviously, these guys were criticizing. That's why we became a nation. The United States uh, became a nation on its own because they were very critical of how they were being treated by the crown, the British crown at the time, King George. But so you could see that. So I mean, that's strong in the Constitution that we must be able to criticize government and criticize the policies of government. Um, Recently, I mean, we just had arrests of people that were very vocally for several years against the foreign policy, and they were preaching in the streets against the foreign policy of the government. It's not just typically just the current administration, but the anti imperialist message, which I relate to. But if you don't, that's like I said, that's discussions. We need to have a discussion. Your speech is welcome, but what's happened? These people were actually arrested for speaking out against. So that's in the news right now. So you can. That it's in my head right now. I can't remember what the name of the group was, but there's several of them. They were a black socialist group that out of St. Louis. So anybody after fact or whatever, if anybody knows now, you can check into that. So, but yeah, it's always going to be challenged. It's always going to be challenged because we're talking centers of power again. Okay, that's makes it dangerous. We are dangerous because we're speaking against the system of power. And that's not allowed by authoritarian systems. And if we're supposed to be a democratic system, a system based on liberties, with this First Amendment saying that the government cannot make any laws or cannot prevent someone from criticizing whoever, speaking out against anyone in the government, if they're says now we're going back to a monarchy, and the king decides cut his head off. He spoke poorly of us elites of the anyway. So that's a really good quote from Teddy Roosevelt. Um, Once again, if you want to access this is just from Goodreads. It's like Google freedom of speech are going to come up. This is going to be the first thing, and it's good. Next quote: If freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led, like sheep to the slaughter. Interesting syntax. You kind of let you know that it's from a period not kind of previous to ours, to the modern speaking that we have. So if you think about syntax, the order of words and sentence, the order of words in a sentence, basically, and phrases, words and phrases. If freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. It's poetic. But it was I'll give you a hint too, it was another politician, a famous American politician. Um, so anyway, but what it's basically saying is that you become, you become propagandized. I mean, because if all of a sudden all other ideas besides the basic narrative that you're told day in day out, this is the way it is, and this is the way it's going to be, just kind of live this way. Don't worry about it, or then it's like, let's don't rock the boat. Don't do anything to, criticize. Don't criticize. Just go along. That's what happens a lot. Complacency happens a lot, especially when you're in an empire. You're in the American empire. Very complacent. Uh, People become settled. There's, Okay, it's big. We've been here a long time. We had these systems. We got to think, okay, yeah, I'm comfortable enough. But then all of a sudden you slip in and you say, whoa, things are becoming a little inequitable. Um, it might become too late to start speaking out. That's what, look at what's happening in France now. Um, they're trying to protect the progress that they've made, and they're learning that really the governments aren't working for the people. And it's one of the things that a lot of us who criticize the government here understand, that the government is not, they're supposed to be by the people, for the people, and that ain't the way it is anymore. There's lots of room to criticize, that's for damn sure. But anyway, so that's going back to that, and that's a very short one. If freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. So saying dumb and silent means now we can't, or maybe even if we want to try to speak up against it, we've created a system where it doesn't allow it. Doesn't allow. Nobody's going to hear that. Okay, and we're getting to that point, I believe, personally. And there's a lot of sheep being led to the slaughter, and little by little. But anyway, who said that? That was George Washington, the first president of the United States. Of course, general. The one thing about Washington was interesting is that he said, and I don't have a direct quote, but he basically said that political parties are going to be, um, what would you call it, the demise of the political system. He says he was totally against having political parties, that people would be backed by a party. Washington was the second president. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah. I guess I was raised in the wrong school. No, but most people were taught. Yeah, Washington was. Yeah, I remember who was the first guy. There was somebody else that was president, and then but he was the first elected president. Am I correct, or what? What was the? Fill me in, Cheryl, if you know anything more about that. We'll just briefly. We'll see if we can get who that first one was. But anyway, bottom line is that he was the probably at the time the most revered person. He wasn't a politician. He came from the military. He was a general, so he didn't grow up being a politician. So, but he was elected as the president. What do you want to call it? The second president. Okay. And anyway, moving on to the next comment. We'll take a few more of these, and just it's kind of fun, I think, going over these. Once a government is committed to the principle of silencing the voice of opposition, it has only one way to go, and that is down the path of increasingly repressive measures until it becomes a source of terror to all its citizens and creates a country where everyone lives in fear. That's interesting. And that was another politician that said that. I'll read it once again. Once a government is committed to the principle of silencing the voice of opposition, it has only one way to go, and that is down the path of increasingly repressive measures. That's a tongue twister. Increasingly repressive measures until it becomes a source of terror to all its citizens and creates a country where everyone lives in fear. We're getting there. We're getting back there. This is, I'll tell you up front who this is. That was Harry Truman said that. And there's lots of people have positive and negative things to say about Harry Truman, but that's a good quote, and it's true that once the government is committed to the principle of silencing the voice of opposition. Let's just take that phrase. Once a government is committed to the principle of silencing, we can break it down to that. Silencing the voice, principle of silencing the voice of opposition. And sometimes the opposition is from one sector. From what, if we're going to divide the political landscape between left and right, Sometimes the opposition is going to be on the left. Sometimes the opposition is going to be on the right. And I'd argue that the opposition is from the left and the right at this time, and most times too. I mean, there's always, there's an establishment trying to keep hold. There's this, somebody that's just trying to keep a status quo and keep this system, this neoliberal system that we have right now. And then there's people on the left and the right calling it out and trying to change things. And now, like I just said, we went back. If you just tuned in or whatever, a little while back, we talked about the what's in the news lately about that group, that Black Socialist group, that was at some of its members have been arrested for voicing opinions that don't agree with the foreign policy of the United States at this juncture. So this is as poignant as you can get, and as more committed that they get to censorship. Okay, it says there's only one way to go, and that is down the path of increasingly repressive measures. So, and the closer you get to war, the deeper you get into war situations. You can look back to all the protests before the First World War, deep into we're not even talking about the year before we got involved or 2 years before we got talking about when tensions started building, and the movement, the anti-war movements, how they were repressed. It was interesting. I've seen a bunch of little pieces on it and read some stuff on the First World War. Usually, as growing up in my generation, our parents fought in the Second World War. Our parents or uncles or whoever, they were part of that war. So you learn about, and everything was, all the history and stuff. You learned all about that. Not a whole lot about the First World War and how, that's the war that set up the Second World War, as most people might know if you study history and all. But especially in those times when it's like trying to manufacture consent for war. Those are the times where it's kind of like, we don't want any other voices coming in. This is what we're trying to do. We're going to invade this country, and we're gonna tell you about this and that, whether it's true or not. We're going to tell you about this, and this is why, and this is why. And so you got to come on board. Otherwise, you're a traitor. You're whatever, a communist, a Nazi, or whatever. You get slimed. You get slurs and what's the word I'm looking for? But anyway, we got to be aware of that, and that's, like I said. In this day and age, we have to be more. And this is Harry Truman. This is a guy from late 19. He was president in the late. After he took over, he was the vice president for FDR. And when FDR passed away, he took over, and then he won. I think he won one term, or he won two. I can't remember. But and he's the one that dropped the atomic bomb, that approved the dropping of the atomic bomb. So, anyway, that's another story. Okay, going back to here, I guess Cheryl said she's maybe you dropped out again, or you said Washington was the second president. Trying to remember who the first president was. Anyway. All right, next one. Quote, "My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus." Okay, let me read that first sentence again, because I broke that up. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus. Okay, that's interesting. We'll just stop at that phrase in here. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus. So what this is almost like just that phrase is anti-democratic in a way. It's kind of like we think of a consensus as something. Well, that's a democracy. We achieve a consensus, and the consensus rules. In a lot of terms, that's how we make laws. We They build consensus in the Congress for whatever reason, and they make a law, or at least a majority or whatever. But my opinion, but to say my own opinion is enough for me. Okay. And I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus. Okay. Now let's continue on. That's just the first part of it. Any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this can pick a number, get in line, and kiss my ass. And that's an opinion. That's called free speech. So reading that again in its totality, my own opinion is enough for me. And I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this can pick a number, get in line, and kiss my ass. So that's funny. That's a good one. That was Christopher Hitchens. Who I don't know who that is. If anybody knows. Christopher Hitchens. All right. Hey, we're getting on almost. We're getting about an hour here. I think I'll do one more, and then we'll do a little wrap up. So here's the last one. Okay, let's. And this is a short one. This is a little blurb. It says, "quote Hypocrites get offended by the truth," and pretty self-explanatory. I mean, if somebody does something that it says one thing, does another, that's hypocrisy, right? I mean, in a general terms, that's a concept of hypocrisy. I'm going to do this, but I'm going to tell you to do that. And that happens all the time. We see it all over the place and in every walk of life, and doesn't matter, not just politics and everything. But the hypocrites get offended by the truth. So if all of a sudden I'm I'm doing something, somebody tells me, "Hey, you're doing this," it's like, "Don't do what I say, do what I do." Let's go. No. So it's like, it's like going into the world. A political statement, a brief political statement right here. I mean, the American empire goes into so many countries, and we have our NGOs, and we have the CIA, we have the NGOs that push and help revolutions develop, and we start um, causing trouble in all parts of the world, and revolutions and that. And if you don't believe that, that's fine. That's your opinion. But if you keep reading history from independent sources, you'll understand that that's basically what we've been doing. Okay, so but what we're saying is we have this, what do they call it, the order, the world based order, or something, the rules based order. And I wrote a song one time called "Who Makes the Rules," and it's important to understand that if you're going to follow some rules, you better know who's the one that are making them. And the one that are making them are these basically in this rules based order is made by a bunch of corrupt politicians, corporate elites, and people who bought the government. Now all there's it's a corrupt government. And I think most people would tend to agree with that if you're watching anything from me. If you really believe that we're squeaky clean in that, then I don't know, man. I would just say keep reading, keep finding stuff out, and hopefully along the way you might come to agree. If you don't agree, that's fine too. But we are very hypocritical with our foreign policy, and so when all of a sudden somebody exposes some truth about what we really do, they are the first ones to become censored or smeared, and lies told about them. So and I think most people know, if you know me from Facebook or just in life in general, that I'm a advocate to get Julian Assange freed. So somebody sitting in prison's been alienated for years for exposing crimes by the U.S. empire. You think that you let that set in. I mean, just think about it. He exposed crimes, and this isn't about the Democratic Party election and whatever that kind of thing was that all the Democrats are all up in arms about with him, um, which was all truth and verifiable truth that he put out. But I mean, everybody said, "Well, why didn't he say something about Trump or something like that?" Well, okay, so why plenty have come out to said stuff about Trump. So that is not why he's in prison. He's in prison for exposing war crimes. Period. That's if you look at the charges, if you look what they're trying to extradite him for, it's that situation. And so that's hypocrisy at its worst or best, depending on what angle you're going to look at it from. So I'll end the quotes there. And yeah, just kind of wrap it up here and see if I made a couple little comments here. And I've been mentioning power centers throughout this presentation. And when I say, going back to the theme of free speech is dangerous, it's only dangerous if you're not willing to accept other people's opinions and be willing to tell the truth and accept, differing opinions. It's not dangerous. It's like you're hearing other ideas. Okay, as artists, somebody might come up and say, "I don't like this. You use the wrong color here. You use the wrong. It's like you should use this word instead. And or whatever in a poem or in a song. We get together as songwriters and we critique each other. Sometimes we'll sit in a circle and critique each other. I haven't been to one of those in a while, but that's something I've done, and people do. And it helps. You're looking to improve yourself and see what other people, and you need to bounce. You write, and you're writing, and you're the one reading it. You're the writer and the reader at the same time. And sometimes, if you're good at it, you can kind of remove yourself and kind of look at it and say, "This is, I'm going to read it and kind of, or hear it and kind of listen to it from a fresh perspective." And sometimes you write something, you pick it up a little bit later and read it, or you record something. I'll sit on it for a few days, come back at it and say, "Oh, okay, I screwed up here. I did this wrong," that kind of thing like that. So that's we want to be able to hear something, and it's kind of like sometimes it's bullshit or whatever. Somebody's just making something up to say something or whatever it is. That's all related to that concept of having some freedom to interact. I mean, if all of a sudden people are scared to say things, then we don't improve as a society. We become unjust, and like I said, there's no recourse, you might say, to the lies. Speaking of lies, last thing I'm going to talk about is just the media in general. I've had conversations with many people, and it's one of those things where it's okay if the media, not everybody gets caught in this situation where it's kind of like if certain thing being said, something that's, you don't know if it's 100% true. You want it to be 100% true. So you want it to, all of a sudden some news comes out and you want it to be, boy, if that's true, then, and then if they say it enough, it must be true. It's got to be true. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's what happened. So it gets to be where an opinion or even an outright lie, which that happens a lot more than most people, I think, believe. So, what we need to do is to move. We need to expand our scope of sources. Um, I'm constantly railing against the mainstream media, and just there. If you listen on a lot of subjects, you'll hear the same phrase, the same. You say, "What's going on here?" These, CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, everybody's got the same thing on in certain areas, and it's mostly on foreign policy, and some other and anything that protects the banks and and big business. Okay, because that's that's big media is big business, and they're supported. All their advertisers are huge businesses. So you don't touch any of that. Okay, there's little things you can say if it's major news and something like, oh, this bank screwed up or whatever it is, and then you throw somebody under the bus for that. But um, so if I could suggest to anybody anything, and as we move ahead, um, well, as artists, as citizens, is to get a wider source, okay, wider base of sources. Just don't listen to two or three different, and move away from um, definitely move away from the mainstream. I mean, I actively make sure that I listen a little bit and see what the sound bites are coming out of the mainstream media, all the different media sources, um, and news and pop art and even everything. So I get a little bit of that, but I make sure that I have a wide base that I listen. So I'm getting opinions from a lot of different sources. Hey, going back to the chat here as I wrap it up. Oh, the pink shotgun. Hey, hi, pink shotgun. Sometimes I don't know who's so pink, who looks like a pink shotgun in but anyway, if you want to chime in with pink shotgun, where do you where do you kind of hang out at? Where you live in? What area? Are you in the Houston area, or are you in Chicago or Florida or Timbuktu? Oh, yeah, a pink shotgun. That's Kristen. That's my friend Kristen. So okay, yeah, you got on tail end, but you can watch the whole thing. It's been messy. Cheryl kind of got at the beginning. She kind of helped me at least get it going here. We had a couple little glitches early on, just getting the thing going. But once we got going, I think we did okay. But I pretty appreciate you chiming in here. And but yeah, definitely listen. Tell people to come in and listen to the presentation here. And I don't know, hopefully opened a few eyes and had a reasonable discussion. If anybody wants to send in some chats, not chats, but comments after the fact here. If you see this after the live presentation, and I'm going to be doing every Sunday live. I'm going to make that. Even if I'm out of town, I should be able to do it. I'll probably just have to do it off of my tablet or phone. But I want to keep it going. We ran long here today. Damn, we're almost at an hour 15. So I'm definitely going to wrap up and say thank you to everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to this, like this video, and we're going to continue on in lots of different areas, different subjects, nuts and bolts of the music industry and art and songwriting, and then also some culture and a little bit of politics as it applies to our arts. And in fact, we could have went deeper into this, but I thought, yeah, that's about right. So thank you very much. This is Folk You Zeus, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.